Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you a little tutorial on this brown dog's eye here, and this is a new series of tutorials which I will be doing. I'll be doing various different animal eyes in different colours and showing you exactly how I render them and everything. So today I have a black Labrador called Molly who has this gorgeous dark brown eye, which I'm going to just run through the various things which I've done to complete the eye. So I started off by erasing my outline, which I always do whenever I start any piece of coloured pencil work because I don't like the graphite line to show through my finished work. And all I've done is taken a dark sepia and a warm grey 4, and I've just gently outlined some of the eye there. I've outlined the iris, and then I've outlined some of the fur which goes around the eye itself. Above the eye there is this dark shadow. I've just penciled in with some dark sepia just to suggest that shadow. At the moment I'm just filling in all of the watermarks which I can see in the eye. There's some little reflective parts and some white of the eye showing, so I'm just adding those in. And the white of the eye isn't exactly white. What I've added down is a base layer of warm grey 1 instead of a layer of white, and then I've gone over with various different greys, warm grey 3 and warm grey 5, just to tone it up a little bit. I've also added a little bit of Nougat into the side there, just where it's a little bit browner on the edge. So before I actually start any coloured pencil work within the eye itself and start colouring the iris, I like to add a little bit of the fur around the outside, and that's just so I can judge all the different values and tones within the eye a lot easier, especially when I've got a dark haired dog like this. I like to add all of the black and dark fur around the eye and get it to the tone where it needs to be, and then I can safely judge all of the tones and the depth within the eye itself. So to do the black fur around the outside of the eye, I've just added a base layer of warm grey 1, and then I've gone over with warm grey 3 and warm grey 5, and then finally with a sepia pencil, and I've just layered them up in this manner. Most of the pencils that I've used to render this eye have been the Fabriano Polychromos. I've used a few Caran d'Ache pencils, and I have also listed all of the pencils that I've used throughout this tutorial in the description below. There's a lot of fur work going on around the outside of the eye, and I'm just continuing to build up those greys, just building up the tones till I see that they're correct with my reference photo. And I'm also adding a little bit of blue in there. I've used some Caran d'Ache silver grey, and I've also used a little bit of dark indigo to get that black fur really dark and really rich. Sometimes I add a little bit of walnut brown and a little bit of nougat because there's a little bit of a brown hint within the fur, and I've just used that just to give a little bit of a hint of colour in there. So now we move on to the eye itself, and the first thing that I do is I just gently erase some more graphite if I need to, and I go in with a really sharp white pencil. My white pencil of choice is actually the Prismacolor white pencil, and that's because it's really opaque and I can get a really fine detail down with that. I just layer some white down first, and then I go about and add all of the colours around that. So the white that I've added is just for the highlight of the eye. I'm using a dark sepia pencil to add all of the dark areas within the eye. So where I've added those white highlights, I've drawn the shapes which I can see that are around that in the reflection of the eye where the pupil is. And I've also added some shading on the bottom of the eye with the dark sepia where there's a blend from dark to light brown. Along the top of the eye I've used a similar technique, but instead of going straight in with the dark sepia, I've gone in with the walnut brown first. For the iris itself, what I've done is added a layer of warm grey 1, and then I've layered some raw umber and some burnt ochre on top of that to create a really nice rich orange tone. On top of that, to create a really lovely dark colour, I've added some burnt sienna, some burnt umber and also some walnut brown. When I'm drawing irises, I don't tend to shade like I would do with fur. I want a really smooth finish, so instead of using lines, I tend to use little circular motions because I seem to find that fills the tooth of the paper and it makes the area a lot smoother. You don't really want a grainy looking eye like you do with the fur, so it's just a different technique to get a smoother finish on the iris. So I'm using a warm grey 5 pencil just to add in some areas of the highlight there. You can see that I have defined all of the white sections, so all of the white highlights, and I've gone around that and added the appropriate tone with the warm grey 5. On the highlights there, I'm just adding some steel grey and some Paynes grey 50%. I add a little bit of Delft blue here and there as well, just for a little bit of an extra blue pop, just to bring out the highlights a little more. I'm continuing to do the highlight and the reflections within the eye. Most of the reflection on this eye is over the pupil, so there's only a little hint of the pupil which you can see on the right hand side there, just showing through. The rest of the pupil is covered by a highlight and reflection. I tend to use black as a last resort when I'm drawing eyes, so if there's something that I can't quite get dark enough with a dark sepia, I go in with the black pencil and just add that in, so it really adds the definition in tone. Sometimes it's a little hard to get the definition in tone when you've added so many layers of grey, dark sepia and various other colours, so the black just helps to give it a little bit more. So that's the majority of the eye done. I'm just adding a little bit of pink just to bring out those browns, a bit more blue just to bring out the highlights again, and I'm just making sure I'm going over everything, making sure everything is smooth and burnishing into the paper. And that's pretty much it for how I create my eyes. It's just, instead of using line techniques within an iris, it's using small circular motions and layering up my colours from the lightest to the darkest, so going from the warm grey 1 all the way up to the walnut brown. When you're drawing your eyes, make sure that you get your values 100% correct. Always look at your reference photo, because that's where I find a lot of people go wrong. They tend to not spend a lot of time looking at their reference, and then they find that their values are completely different to what they've drawn to their reference photo. So that's it on this tutorial for this eye. It's just a small short demonstration on how I would render a brown eye like this. My next tutorial will be of a blue cat's eye. It's a different coloured iris which shows a little bit more colour variation, and again you'll be able to see the technique and everything that I use on there. So that's it for this tutorial, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and follow me on all of my social media sites, and I'll see you with the next tutorial.